Sorry. My family does things weird was the line I put in my email informing work that I needed time to attend 5 funerals and a solar eclipse. Okay, it wasn't really 5 funerals. It was 1 funeral for 5 people. Now, on my mom's side of the family, we aren't very traditional. Everyone gets cremated, and generally speaking, we do not hold funeral services. What we do instead is put the ashes of our loved ones in a dusty corner of our homes and say, yeah, we're eventually going to do something with those. And of course, they are all in a plain plastic crematorium box because who needs to spend money on an urn? Eventually, we're going to do something with those ashes. My grandfather died in 2010. He had a severe head injury roughly 10 years prior to that, and my grandma had been the sole caretaker after that. When he passed away, she cremated his ashes and stored them away. Her idea was that we were going to get the entire family together one day and spread his ashes on Lake Whitney, where they had run a successful business for many years with one of their daughters and son-in-law. It was a nice thought that never really moved into the planning stage. Next, my brother died in 2013 of cancer. After battling for 3 years, he passed away in his sleep. He was young, 25 when he passed, so we did hold a memorial at his favorite bar for him. As you can imagine, I have little recollection of that evening as I took full advantage of the fact that we were in a bar. I was with my mom at the cremation store, so we did end up buying a nicer box to store him in. I spread a handful of his ashes at Yosemite National Park, and my mom spread some in Hawaii, but we kept most of him. He ended up being put on a shelf in the storage room in my mom's art studio for some years. My uncle died in 2021. He was part business owner with my grandparents. His death was the beginning of the solar eclipse plan. My aunt waited about 1.5 years to start planning his funeral. She needed time to grieve first, and he wasn't going anywhere, so she decided that she wanted to spread his ashes during the 2024 total solar eclipse because she lived in the path of totality. She sent out invitations and started planning. Then tragically, in 2023, roughly 6 months prior to the solar eclipse, my cousin passed away. It was the same routine of having him cremated and keeping him in a box carefully stored away until some sort of service was not only imagined, but planned. Finally, in December of 2023, my grandma died. The 95-year-old matriarch of our family who had owned 3 successful businesses, traveled the world, and laughed until her dying breath had let go. And just like that, from my grandfather to my grandmother 13 years later, we had accumulated the ashes of 5 of our beloved family members, albeit some had collected more dust than others. This is when my aunt decided to include everyone at the memorial. Both her parents, her son, her husband. We threw my brother, her nephew, in there for good measure. At that point, there was no reason to leave anyone out. So the day before the total solar eclipse in April of 2024, my family and a few friends of the family and deceased gathered at my aunt's house. There was no eulogizing. There was no religious leader to pray over everyone. We just sat and went over each person individually while we shared stories and funny memories of each other, of each of them. You would think this would take a long time, but I estimate it only took us about the same amount of time to memorialize 5 people as it does the Catholic Church to memorialize 1. So I feel like we made good time. after the memorial part of the day was done, we went down to the lake where my aunt, uncle, and grandparents had run a successful business for 40 years. Spread their ashes one by one. The lake was quite cloudy after that. But now, every time I swim in it, it warms my heart knowing that I am swimming with all of my deceased family members. The next day, the whole family got together outside next to the highway, and my aunt handed out solar eclipse glasses. Took some time for the moon to totally eclipse the sun. One of the younger family members, an 8-year-old, started complaining about being bored. I told him, "You're bored now, but one day you'll get to tell the story of how you attended 5 funerals in a solar eclipse." It was supposed to be cloudy that day, but we ended up in a perfect spot where not a single cloud blocked the eclipse while it was in totality. After the moon started to move off the sun, we all started packing up, making our ways back to our homes. The moral of the story is, if you wait too long to honor those you love in their death, you might inadvertently start a collection. Also, there's a small possibility that Lake Whitney is haunted by multiple generations of my family, so swim at your own risk.